But Nelson, I don't even know where to start here, because I found you probably months, if not like a year ago, based on your memory skill, which is we'll get into in a moment, which is remarkable. You know that. And I started to dig deeper and found out you love adventures as much, if not more, than I do. And wow. So you've done Everest 4 times now. You've done Denali and Kilimanjaro. Like, I was like, okay, hold on, time out. This just took a completely left turn because I was just going to talk to you about your memory skill and
Okay.
all
Yeah.
about that. But I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, you live a life that I am just super, super interested in hearing about.
Thanks.
And yeah, I'm going to introduce you. And if I miss something, please tell me. But
Okay.
Nelson
Yeah.
Dellis, you are a 5-time USA memory champ. You are
That's
an
right.
author and a 4-time Everest expedition and Kilimanjaro and Denali, as I just said. What am I missing of all that? That's impressive enough.
Yeah. I mean, those are the accolades, I guess.
Amazing.
I last year I added to that. I had my first Guinness World Record
Of
in
what?
memory. In memory, it was it's over there, but it's a very specific record involving memorizing cards underwater.
Wow.
So yeah,
I, I'm
yeah. So
I'm excited to dive into all of that. But yeah, so where are you from? You're from across the pond, right?
originally, yeah, I was born in England, just
Mhm.
outside of London, and my parents are French and Belgian. And my dad's job always had us traveling from Europe back to the US and back and forth a few times growing up. So
That's awesome. And so
yeah,
where did you move to when you came over to America? I'm curious.
it was South Florida, Miami.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess my parents always wanted sun, good weather. And
There you go.
once we came here for the first time in like 1990, um, that was always where we came back.
Awesome.
And then I had been here for a couple of years here and there for school. So all my friends that I knew were still here. And so it made sense to just always come back to
Gotcha.
Miami.
Because I had seen in a few of your Instagram posts, everybody I recommend go check out. You were in the Adirondacks once, if not
Yes.
multiple times, right?
Yeah. So now currently we live just a stone's throw away from the Adirondacks. So my wife's family's from up here, and things are kind of tricky to raise a family in Miami, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So we decided to come up here. We've been here
Okay.
about a year.
Nice.
So,
Because I saw that because I was born and raised in the Utica area
oh yeah.
until I was about 8. And then my whole family moved to the Binghamton area, which is like 3.5 hours away, kind of near the PA
Okay.
border. But yeah, I
Oh,
grew
okay.
up probably like an hour and a half or
Oh
so
yeah.
from
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
are now. So I'm familiar with upstate. Upstate is it's cold, it's gray. I don't know if you've gotten the snow yet, but it's coming
It's mild. It's been mild so far, people tell me, but I
so
think the
far.
next week we're getting more snow. So
Okay.
definitely doesn't feel like the winter that everybody's hyped up, you know?
Yeah, until you get that nor'easter. It's gonna
Uh,
happen at some point, but I tell you what, if you were there, which sounds like you were there for the fall is just absolutely
oh yeah. Even the
majestic.
summer was just awesome. You know,
It's
like
it's
being in
great.
Miami right now is the best time,
Mhm.
but always forget every year after we go through the winter, which is really nice, how miserable Miami's weather is, like heat wise. Like I can't stand it. You can't go outside.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, unless you're like you love the beach, you're in the water all the time, which I'm not. I don't have a boat, you know, it's like
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah.
in the AC all summer.
Yeah.
Well, it's well, not even summer, it's like 9 months out of the year.
I'm in North Carolina. That's like hot enough for me. Yeah, this is as far south as I have any interest in
Yeah.
going. But yeah, so I kind of let's just go ahead and dive more into we'll go into your memory
Sure.
background and skill. And wow, what a skill that is. Like 5-time USA memory champ. Like that is absolutely incredible. And I was watching some of your videos of what that actually entails. I wouldn't even know where to start as far as beginning to prep for that. So when did your interest in increasing your memory and becoming competitive with memory challenges start?
Yeah, so it's getting back there now, but it's around 2008, 2009. I started to get interested in this sport of memory, this competitive world of memory. And I had learned about these championships that existed where people were tested on their memory. And I thought it was fascinating. Even more fascinating to see what supposedly regular people with regular memories were able to do with their obviously not regular memories.
Right.
But they were all claiming that it was trained with these techniques that have been around for thousands of years, and it just took a bit of practice. I was a little skeptical, but was super interested to try them. I bought a few books and kind of tried the exercises in them and was very surprised how well they worked. And then, yeah, I kind of took over from there. I've always been very competitive, and I said, yeah, how cool would it be if like my average memory just suddenly could win a championship or break a record or something like that. So that's what I was training for. And another part of that story is we had Alzheimer's in our family. My grandmother suffered from it. So
Same here, actually. Yeah.
really,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like everybody has someone or knows someone, that has suffered with it, and that it inspired me to really take my brain training seriously, because I was young, I'm still young. I didn't want the same thing to happen to me as I aged,
Does training for something like that like affect Alzheimer's or push it?
Yeah, the research actually isn't clear, but in the off chance that it does,
Yeah.
I'm prepared.
Yeah.
The worst case is I've developed a skill that enhances my life before that ever happens,
Oh,
and
for
that's a
sure.
benefit as well.
For sure. Absolutely. So it sounds like you had just a normal, regular memory as anybody else in the world,
Sure.
and you wanted to enhance that. I honestly never really thought about that, nor did I ever really think that was like an option. It was almost kind of like some people are just
Same.
born with a memory.
Exact same thought I had. Yeah.
Right. So what led you down the road to realizing, okay, this isn't just a thought. This is, you can actually flex this like a muscle. And like, what were
Yeah.
some of like the simplest techniques that you would start with?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was skeptical. I was like, I really don't think it's something like playing the piano where you can practice and then you're a better piano player. Granted,
Right.
there are people who are gifted, musical savants or prodigies, but most people can learn how to play an instrument or learn to do a skill if they practice and learn the technique. But I didn't think memory was like that. So
Right.
I never thought about it in that way. I'd always thought, like you said, it's something you're born with. Maybe some people just have it naturally better than others, and that's just how it is. But no, memory is a skill. It can be molded just like any other ability or skill. And yeah, all it took was just to go through a few exercises, and it kind of showed to you very quickly, like, oh wow, I didn't realize my memory was that good. If only I practiced, I can only imagine where that would eventually lead up. So yeah, I mean, and essentially what the techniques boil down to are different ways of thinking about how to process information. Nobody really ever tells you how to go about processing information and retaining it. Excuse me for my cough. But there is an effective way, and people have been using this for thousands of years because they've had to translate or not translate, but pass down information from one generation to the next, right?
Yeah.
Before there were books, before there were Wikipedia pages and all that jazz, right? It was all up here. So yeah, it's a matter of practicing it and training it. And what you're actually training is this ability to take the information that you're trying to memorize and putting it into a format that is stickier in the mind. And it turns out that we're a lot better at remembering pictures, images, than abstract information. And when I say a picture, you probably immediately think of like, a Polaroid or some, X by X sized set of pixels, right? That represent some visual stimulus. But it's more than that when you're thinking about a picture in your mind, because first of all, we can't create a Polaroid in our head. It's not that simple.
Right.
When we say a picture, it's really kind of an amorphous blob that we kind of generate in our mind with as much sensory information that we can imagine, right? Meaning, what does it look like? What does it smell like? Can we imagine that? What might it make us feel, right? All these things generate the picture that I mean. And the more you can do that, the more you can add to that using all the senses and emotion and things like that, the higher chance you have of making such things stick. Because we remember things that are out of the ordinary, emotionally charged, things that move. And that's essentially what we're doing when, as memory athletes, as anybody who's learned this art of memory, is turning things into meaningful pictures. That's the first step, right? Is to translate the complicated stuff our brain doesn't like into the things that it's actually better at receiving and storing.
It reminds me that, like the times where you hear a song come on the radio, it just takes you back in time to a specific day or a moment or someone who you were with, or a smell or a scent. It's almost like that. Maybe not quite a sense, if you will, but it's just like another layer onto something, like you said, emotionally charged, right? Like that's how I tend to remember things a lot. It was like, who was with me? Where was I? What was I feeling at that time? So it's almost like you're painting pictures and emotions with these memories, correct?
Yeah. And so it's a great example you bring that up. And take, for example, one of those songs, right, that you've maybe heard recently, that when you heard it, you were like, oh man. And suddenly, you imagine, like, right, you're back in high school,
exactly,
kissing your girlfriend for the first time, right? And it was like, you're there. You remember what she was wearing, maybe her perfume smell, where you guys went for dinner, if you took her out on a date, whatever. You remember all this detail suddenly, just because of these sound waves hitting your ears, right? In the future, right? Imagine that process, right? That sudden taking you back to a specific memory, that you can imagine that being able, that you can do that to anything that you want to memorize, right? Having that same reaction to, somebody says, hey, what are the presidents? List them all, right? And suddenly you start in Washington and the others just come out because you have such a vivid kind of association. In the same sense that song associated to something very powerful, you've now done the same process for, information that is out there that you wanted to learn, and now to access it is such like a visceral experience, so that's essentially what we're doing. We're trying to trick it, because the one that you're explaining is more natural, right? You didn't plan to memorize it that way. It was just an experience you had, and it is associated with the song. But we're trying to trick our brains into having those same connections to the things that we want to memorize as well.
Is it temporary? Like when you do this and when you're training for something specific, like does that just fall out of your brain in a year? Or is it like that sticky that you still remember, like remembering a deck of cards like a year ago?
Yeah, it varies. And it depends on what we do with our upload, if you want to call it that. So the techniques that we practice, you can think of it as like a high upload speed to the cloud, and our brain is the cloud. Okay. Over time, everybody's brain will forget things. There's science on this. There's charts that measure this thing called the forgetting curve, and it's pretty consistent across the board for all humans, how quickly we forget things. It's designed to forget, essentially.
Interesting.
But we all know that from our studying days that when you review something and you don't cram at the last minute, the more you review, the more time that passes between study sessions, let's say, over time, the more it gets ingrained into your long-term memory, and the more you know it, right? This is the reason why review works. And it's super important to remember things for the long-term review. There's no escaping that. These techniques will help make things more sticky. And at the very beginning, they will be extremely sticky. And you may not need to review quite so often at the beginning. But if you do want to keep that there for the rest of your life, for another year or just a week, around there, you do have to review. Now, the way that we upload the information also lends itself to being reviewed easier, and in a more, I think, engaging, fun way. So usually review is never the fun part. It's tiresome. You're looking at the same shit over and over again. Traditionally, how people will do it by rote repetition. But if you've uploaded it with a memory technique that's kind of fun and engaging and silly, and you enjoyed it, yeah, you'll want to go back and think about it. It's not so much harm. It's actually quite enjoyable.
Right.
And then the more you do that, the more you can keep the information. So going back to your question with a deck of cards, I do it every day, multiple times a day. So I don't need to remember every single deck that I ever memorized, because it's essentially useless once I've recalled it and I move on. But let's say that you gave me a deck of cards, you took it away and you said, Nelson, I'm going to test you on this, in a year. Right. And let's say that I'm not allowed to write it down or do anything else to kind of have a way to review it on paper or by seeing it ever again. And let's say I'm attached to a lie detector test and I'm honest about this. It's not a problem, because all I would have to do is just the way I've memorized it, just I'd review it more frequently at the beginning and then over time taper down, but I'd always have to review. But what's cool about that is I would never need to see it again to do the review. As long as the first time I got it in there correctly. Sometimes I might make a mistake or two, but I want to make sure I got it right. And then once I know I have it, then I can keep it if I want. And if I don't want it, then I just don't review it. And eventually it will fall away. In competitions, we have to memorize again and again and again, cards often again and again and again. So it actually behooves us to forget things sometimes. And we have to get used to memorizing something quickly, being able to regurgitate it perfectly, and then basically forget it so we can do another one, So we have that like ability and flexibility to manipulate what's being put up here and how long it stays there and all that kind of stuff.
That's unbelievable. You're just like, yeah, no problem. After 1 year, no problem. And it's just, that's so cool, because you were just somebody with a normal memory. It's not like you were born with a gift and people can't relate to this.
Yeah. And I think, right. But what's cool is I think we all have this ability there. It's like ready to go for anybody. It's really just a matter of kind of thinking, how I bring it back to what I said before, is like how to take information out there, how to process that information. Like it's really just, the techniques are really just a different way of thinking. And if you get into this habit of thinking that way, whenever anything comes at you and how you live your life, you meet a person, learn their name, you're in a meeting, there's information, you'll almost, I wouldn't say naturally, but you'll be more inclined to remember more things in your life because you're thinking about it through this lens of memory techniques.
It reminds me, I'm sure you remember this. Remember overhead projectors growing up in school?
Yeah.
I always did really well in a lot of my classes, history especially, because I just remember the teacher.
Like with the transparencies and stuff?
Yeah. The teacher would be talking about notes, like the wars and so-and-so did this and did that. And as he or she was writing down the notes, it was like, I would just tell myself stories in my head. Like I'd be picturing these people doing this and riding these horses and going to battle in this city and then doing that and doing this. And I know it's kind of like the abbreviated version, but I would tell myself stories. So when I'd get the test, I just remember the story that was happening and I would do really well in my classes. My sister would be like, how the hell do you never study and you do so well? And she's like, I study my ass off and I can't remember any of this stuff. And I just had to think that was like, I just kind of recall to like what I was playing myself in my head, whether it's the right version or not, whether it looked like that or not. It was my version. And that's how I remember. That kind of seems somewhat similar as to what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, essentially you could argue that the process that we're doing is a fancy storytelling mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think we're designed to remember stories. I think that's even hardwired into who we are as a species, like without this ability to remember and tell stories, or even the thing in our mind that like makes us light up when someone tells a good story, right? Like think of a good movie, a good book, someone on stage giving a good story. Like we always are captivated by a good story, right? Yeah. I think that's part of the reason why we are still around for thousands of years. Just because we're storytelling species, right?
Right.
So it's not uncommon and weird that you could remember better because you were telling yourself a story.
Yeah. And I know you talked about competitions. I'm sure there's people listening there probably like, what are these competitions like? If you don't mind, give me like a little bit of a
The
rundown
rundown.
of
Yeah.
what a USA memory champ goes through to become the champ.
Yeah. So there's different kinds of competitions. The US Championship itself is a day-long event. Um, you show up. The traditional way, it's changed a little bit over the years, but it fluctuates. Maybe it'll go back to that. But the full day, the first half of the day, all the competitors sit down and there's 4 events and they're timed. You're given sheets of paper with the information. So one is memorizing names and faces. You get 15 minutes. There's like a bunch of pages of headshots of people, random people with first and last names. You get to study it for 15 minutes, and then you get the same packet all jumbled up, and you got to write in as many names as you can. The second event is numbers. So you get this big sheet of digits, just row by row, up to like 500 digits, and you get 5 minutes to memorize as many of them as you can in order. And then I think we do that twice. You get 2 attempts. And then there's poetry. So you got to memorize a 50-line previously unpublished poem. Punctuation, lowercase capitals, and of course, what's on each line.
Wow.
And then the final one is a deck of cards. So you shuffle a deck of cards, and then as fast as you can do it perfectly is your score. And then the top 10 or 7 to 10, depending on the rules, they change quite often. They go into like a playoff round in the afternoon where it's like elimination style. We memorize words. People who make mistakes get eliminated. Then we do like a thing called a tea party. So there's these guests that come on stage and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, my birthday is blah, blah, blah. I was from here and my favorite foods are this. Kind of like you're at a tea party or some kind of party event, memorizing someone's information. And then some more people get eliminated when they make mistakes. And then the final event is 2 decks of cards in 5 minutes. And it's, last person standing is crowned the champ. Yeah.
That just sounds incredibly overwhelming. Like I'm curious to know, like you said, there's like 500 just random digits. How far did you get into those digits where you were still on point?
Yeah. So my record in competition, what did I do? At international competition, I did 339.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And you saw that for how long?
Yeah, it's 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Oh my. It just blows me away.
And just to give you more context, my best ever was like around 405 or something like that. It's been a while, but then the world record right now is like, is it 600? It's something like that. Something
Holy
like
shit.
650. I don't know. It's
People
crazy.
can't even remember phone numbers. Like, what is your strategy when you go into a round like that? We just got to remember just random digits.
So stuff that's more abstract seeming like that, where there can be finite combinations, depending on how you look at the numbers, you can come up with a pre-planned system. But what I mean by that is for numbers, you can have a collection of images ready to go for any grouping of numbers that you see. And there's different ways to approach this. Some people have a simple 2-digit system, meaning every 2-digit combo is already an image that you just learned beforehand. So you see a 12, you think of Nelson, right? 12 represents me. It's my favorite number. 66, you might think of the devil, right? 95 might be Tom Brady. Okay. 23 might be Jordan or something. Some of those may seem random, but there's a reason why. That's not important now, but it's easier to remember those things than it is the actual digits.
Yeah.
And then some people have even more complex systems where it's every 3 digits represents one thing. So now you have to have 1,000 prepared images, 000 all the way to 999. And so in those 5 minutes, you're reading the numbers, but you're really seeing these people, these things that you weave into a story, essentially.
Wow. See, I remember going up.
You have like a language, right? That because when I see Tom Brady, it's associated with 95. So if I see him or I see the number for 95, it's like interchangeable. I'm so fluent in that, and most memory athletes are as well.
95. Is that when he went to Michigan? What was
No, so
95?
okay, so there for some of those, like 23 was obvious, right? It's
Right.
the jersey number of Jordan, and some
Mhm.
are obvious like that. 66 was the Devil's 666, right? 12 is my favorite number, but then other ones, because I don't have like an obvious association for all 100 numbers, pairs of numbers. So there's like a translation system that people devise where you can change the a digit to a letter, and then the letters can represent like initials for something. So 95 actually translates to an N and an E, which would be
Okay.
New England.
Yeah.
Then I think New England, I think the Patriots, Brady.
Cheaters.
Yeah, I'm not a Patriots fan, but whatever. Easy to remember.
It reminds me of something that I say kind of have, because I do have. I'm not sure how strong it is. Have you ever heard of synesthesia?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
often say that this is kind of like a learned synesthesia
Yeah.
because I look at these numbers and my cards and like it feels like I look at 95 and it like I feel like I'm at a football game with Tom Brady. It's
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
something
how do
that
you experience it? I'm curious.
it's so numbers, letters, months, they all kind of have like a color to it. And
Oh, cool.
it's not just like a primary color, it's like shades, tints, all that kind of stuff, which probably helps all
Fascinating.
my graphic designers. I work with colors all day. And it's funny, I just literally thought this was normal for everybody. And I remember talking, it was probably my mid-20s. I was dating somebody at the time that was a teacher, and I was just like, hey, we need to do like flashcards with the kids and stuff like that. Do you see numbers as colors and stuff? And like, like the alphabets that you see at people's fridge with the magnets. Like all these letters have different colors and stuff. She's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, that's how I see things. That's not normal. Like September, it's like a dark red, and like January is like a white color, and June is yellow, and October. It's just like all these. She's like, what are you talking about? And so I was like, yeah, I see things as colors, and so on occasion it's one of those things that you kind of say to, like, if you want to forget about it, you can forget about it, but it's one of those things too where if you want to remember it, sometimes I just remember certain colors, shades, and tints and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and it's easy to kind of go
Interesting.
back to where I was. Yeah, it's sometimes I remember just the stupidest stuff. It's like, why do I still remember this? But
I'm
um,
curious because I have colors for months as well. These
yeah,
were designated them at some point, but when I was designating them, I also paused and was like, "Yeah, this feels like that would be a good color for that." So I'm curious because my January is white as well.
white. Yeah, February's red.
Oh no, February is blue. Yeah,
Okay, there you go.
my red is May. But I think some of the mnemonics I had when I first learned it is like October is orange because of a pumpkin.
Okay, I got black.
Red. What?
my
Yours is
my
black?
October is black. Yep.
Okay. No, the red one for May is like I think of May Day.
Okay,
So I just think like danger red, like
gotcha.
interesting.
I wonder how that's shaped. I mean, obviously, there's seasonal things. January's white snow, all that kind of stuff. There's
Yeah.
obviously things that could shape that, but I wonder, like, how many different like calendars as a kid, or like I said, those flashcards or something like that, just really kind of influence. Like they just really kind of imprinted in our brain of like how we
Maybe.
remember things today. I'm
Sure.
curious about
Yeah,
that.
right. Maybe there was a calendar in your kindergarten room that
Right.
had that color on it for each month for whatever reason. And it's
Yeah.
just like that's
Yeah.
just why you feel it's that,
Yeah,
Who
it was
knows?
funny when I Googled it. I was like, this is something. I remember I was like, this is something. I'm not that.
Yeah.
They have a word for this, but
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely incredible. I have like so many questions here. Like one of the questions I have for you is, if someone were to start practicing some of these skills,
Yeah.
how long would you say it takes before somebody really kind of starts seeing some tangible?
Oh, like instantly.
Really?
Instantly. It's one of these things where if I walk you through an example, you'll probably start by saying, "Yeah, I can't do this." And then at the end of it, you're like, "Oh shit, I can do it." And then that shift is like almost unbelievable for some people because it's
Wow.
something that you would never have been able to do if I just hadn't talked you through it, which then is like, well, Nelson just said some things. I did the thinking. So yeah, maybe I could do it all along, right? This is what I was saying before. It's just a matter of thinking differently, not really. Yeah, I don't know. It's different than say like learning the piano. I mean, I guess it's kind of always in you. It's just a matter of you like drilling
Yeah,
things
tap
down
into
with
it.
your
Yeah.
fingers and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like the memory example is more kind of there, latent within us,
Wow.
ready to be
And
tapped into.
you have a master class too, right?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I finally decided to put it all into a cohesive course. I've done my YouTube channel for a while, and it's kind of like a hodgepodge of things I find entertaining
Yeah.
related to memory, but this course was more directed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk about that for a little bit because I know you just kind of said, like you can walk me through it, and I want people to know like what you offer.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's different levels. The very easiest way is, check out my YouTube channel and even just Google memory techniques. There used to be, when I started, there was nothing. You had to really dig or like email the right people to get a little tidbit. But now there's so much stuff out there. So just doing that will get you pretty far. Even YouTube is great. My content or anybody else's content might get you pretty far. Then, books, there's tons of books out there. I have a couple books, one for adults, one that I wrote for kids as well. They're called Remember It and Memory Superpowers. If you just Amazon, Google, search Nelson Dellis book or something, you'll see it. And then next up to that is my course. And there are other memory courses, but mine is mine and it's my way of doing it. Now I call it the Everest Memory Masterclass. Everest because of my love for the mountains. But yeah, it's like a 6-module course that starts at the very basics and goes all the way to the complex, information that you want to memorize. And then I do private coaching. That's kind of like the upper tier. If you really want to work hands-on with someone as your coach, I do that as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to put that link in my notes. Everybody who's interested in working with you, scroll
Please,
down
yeah.
and give it a click. Yeah, like your YouTube and your Instagram is awesome. It's just
Thanks.
it's so full of useful stuff. It's fun to watch. Honestly, the production's fantastic. Who does the production? Is it you or is it
Nice.
someone else?
Yeah, it's me.
Wow.
Yeah,
What
I
the
don't have
hell,
a
man?
team. I do all that stuff myself. It's going to be the death of me because I take so much time to do it all, and
Dude,
I'm
that's
very
awesome.
OCD. Thank you. I appreciate. That's kind of my shtick is like when I started, there were memory videos out there, but it's all like super boring
Yeah.
and basic. So my angle was, what if I made it a little more cinematic and put some higher quality into the production?
It's
So,
fantastic. Yeah. Like maybe
thanks, man.
offline, you can give me some tips or whatever, because I'm definitely
Okay,
looking
yeah.
how to grow my video quality and stuff. And it's fun to watch you do a great job. The production's
Thank you.
awesome. So people go check that out. And I'm trying to ask questions also at the same time for people listening to this, and they're thinking, what can I use my memory for? And one of them would be, I saw you posted a video maybe a couple weeks ago about like going to the grocery store. If you don't mind, maybe like give me an example of like, what's a quick way that people can remember their grocery list?
Yeah. So, backing up a second, when people might be thinking, okay, I don't want to compete, but like, how do I train my memory? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. And, you got to practice the techniques, but like on what? Right. The nice thing about life is that we interact with humans, we interact with information all the time. So there's ample opportunities to have information that you can just practice with. Right. Most of the time nowadays, if there is such information coming at us, we either don't bother memorizing it because it's just a phone tap away, right? You can just search for it and you have it, the answer in a minute, less than a minute, second. Or you can store it in your phone, right? And then have a reminder that gives it to you. Or you can just quickly ask Siri to pull up the number, right?
I do
Like
that
for
all
all
the
your
time.
contacts.
Yep.
So oftentimes we don't even think like, why should I memorize this? And what happens though is most of our memories have atrophied. We don't use them the same anymore, so they're not capable currently as is to do the things that they used to be able to do. Like think of when there were no contact books on your smartphone and you just had to know numbers, right? Like I think of my high school days. I can still remember my best friend's phone numbers, right? I can picture it on the dial, 305-378-6955.
Yep.
And it's like, I think anybody from our generation can relate to that, right? Because you had no other choice, right? The other choice was you had to go get the school directory or the yellow pages and like painfully look it up, right? What a waste of time. So we're capable. It's just we don't do it anymore. So what I encourage people to do is, because memory sounds boring, when you're training, try to memorize something that is meaningful to you, that you want to know, right? Like maybe you're a football fan, you'd like to know all the Super Bowl winners in order or something like that, or some stats, right? Or maybe you're a history buff. Maybe you want to learn something that happened every year, some big event every year in the 1900s, right? In the 20th century. I don't know. So I think that's a nice way to kind of get people towards doing something with their memory. I think at this point, since we're so atrophied there, I think just doing anything with your memory, even if it's saying, hey, when I meet someone, no matter who it is, I'm going to try to remember their name, and if you fail, who cares? You're the same boat you would have if you never tried anyways. But if you remember, damn, well, great practice. And it might even, have some other results that you didn't expect,
And they'll know that you remembered it when you use their name like a month or two later. They'll be like, oh wow, anybody use your name?
Yeah, it's one of the most amazing tools to network and to make an impact on someone, is if you remember their name. So that's it's just something that you want to actually do, and finding the thing that you'd like to memorize or use memory techniques on, I think, is key to finding a motivation to practice every day. And I think that's a big part of it, is you got to use your memory a little bit every day. Even if I didn't tell you a single technique and I just said, hey, force yourself to memorize for 10 minutes. It doesn't sound great, but just do it. You'll get better at memorizing inherently. So if you add a technique to that, then you can probably do it more enjoyably and more efficiently too.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the grocery list thing.
Yeah.
Because I know you said the story. You did an awesome story, like the asparagus going into the bread, and like it was incredible.
That's a very simple way to do it. There are more complex ways to do it, but if you have a list of grocery items, there's a few ways you can go about it. Because I also had an example in that video bit. They didn't include it, but if somebody said, hey, your list is, you need to get some lettuce. Let's say this is the list, right? Lettuce, onions, tomato, beef, mayonnaise, stuff like that. Cool. Okay. But if you think to yourself, like, shit, that's just the toppings of a hamburger. Like, I'm making a hamburger tonight. This is what I need. And it's obvious. Then just remember that, right? Like, if any opportunity you can take to like compress information is obviously beneficial, because you're memorizing one thing versus all the others, right? And that's an easy recipe, right? Obviously, there are more complex recipes where you may not know, like, oh shit, this should have this spice in it. I've never made this dish before. I'd forget, right?
Right. Yeah.
But a hamburger, I mean, what goes on the hamburger, so why bother making a list of all the things when you just know? But let's say it is like a list of totally random stuff. What you will do with each thing in the list is come up and make it funny or whatever, make it bizarre in your mind. And then you connect it to the next thing in the list, meaning, you start with the first thing and the story of this thing interacts with the next thing. So you come up with the details, right? The weirder and more elaborate you make the thing, the more memorable it is. So, if I have to get cheese and what else? Maybe some paper towels or something. I'm going to picture some cheese, maybe I'll picture some really rancid smelling cheese. That seems like a very forceful image in my mind, because I almost like don't like the smell of bad cheese.
Right.
My dad from France loves the smelliest cheese, and I hate it. Okay. So then there's this big block of smelly cheese that I'm just picturing in my mind. And then, like maybe it just melts all over the place. Like in my whole office is just covered in this stinky cheese. And I just get this massive ream of paper towels to like wipe it all down. And I can picture this cascading, roll just emptying out of white paper towel paper, and then just patting up soaking up all the melted cheese or whatever, and then the next word in the list or the next item, you would then after that whole scenario happens, weave it into the next part of the story. Maybe you have to get some broccoli or something, right? So maybe after you're dabbing down the cheese, you go to throw out the paper towels in the garbage, and the garbage can is just made up of broccolis, right? It's just like a waste bin, all green with like broccoli sprout heads at the ends of it or something like that, right?
I love that you're doing this because it shows like the depth that you go to remember these things, the fact that you're describing this. So I appreciate you taking the time to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I'm not even
It's
saying
awesome.
half of it, right? Because even with the
Yeah.
broccoli thing, like in my mind, I'm mentally taking a second to like imagine the texture, right? Like if I touch the garbage bin, right? I can imagine the little like tips of the broccoli
Right.
or whatever it is. It's kind of like beady, right? And like there's like a certain texture and quality to broccoli, that I would
Yep.
picture is this entire garbage can. And it might even smell. Sometimes when you microwave a broccoli bag, it smells like a fart. It's like all these things are racing
Very
into my
true.
mind, and I introduce them into the story briefly just to kind of help drive it home.
This is incredible. This is so
Yeah.
awesome.
And so when you're in the grocery store, um, you'll think of your story. And you'll start with cheese, right? That's the beginning of your story. And if you did it right, it'll all cascade into all the other pieces.
I tend to go to the grocery store, and I think it's called like a mnemonic, maybe like how you said lettuce, onion, tomato, was it bacon, mayonnaise? I think you
Yeah,
said
whatever. Yeah,
so,
there was no bacon, but yeah, you could have
or
bacon. It's fine.
something like
Yeah,
that.
it
But it
was
was like
the meat, the beef, and the
meat,
mayonnaise.
beef.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was. I would just remember like LOT. Like I would try to spell things
Yep, you could do
from the
that too.
first letter.
That's an
Yeah.
acronym.
Yeah.
Or an acrostic, I think they call it. But basically, yeah, taking the first letter and making that into a word. And what you're doing there is you're compressing data as well, right?
Mm.
You're taking, each word, let's say, is an average of 5 to 7 letters, right?
Right.
Times 10, you have an amalgamation of 70 letters, right? That represent things you got to buy. But if
Right.
you just like each one is now just one letter,
Mm.
you just have to remember a 1 10-letter word, right? Or whatever.
So the problem I have now is like that was easy when I was shopping for myself. Now that I just got married to basically like a wizard chef in the kitchen, she's very specific in what she wants. So I
Okay.
just tell her, text me pictures. I don't know what I'm getting.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Because that's very, very helpful to me. But speaking of helpful, and speaking of grocery stores, I know something that you've talked about a few times on your YouTube channel is like things that you eat in supplements. What are some
Yeah.
of the what are some of the health benefits and like some of the things you swear by as far as helping your memory?
Yeah. The number one thing I swear by is anything that's has omega-3 DHA.
Hmm.
There are supplements you can take, like usually fish oil supplements have it in them. But there are foods that have it in them. They're like infused into it. There's some milks or eggs, even some juices that have them in there. There are other types of omega-3s, and those are fine too. But DHA is really the other ones get translated or converted to DHA anyways. But DHA is kind of the sweet spot.
Okay.
That one's got a lot of research behind it. There are some other that have, some studies say blah, 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 and some say that. Some are more anecdotal, but things like walnuts, things that have that are antioxidants, that have antioxidant properties will be good for your memory as well because it reduces inflammation. So things like that. Yeah.
Okay. And what about sleep? Like, how much have you noticed like sleep really affects, like, if you get terrible night's sleep, it really affects your memory?
For sure. Yeah. And it affects it like for a long period of time, over the long term. So, if you have like a bad night of sleep, but you sleep relatively well on average, I don't think that's going to affect or harm your brain, to a noticeable degree. But for example, I've had 3 kids in the last 5 years. And we don't sleep very much. Right now it's pretty rough, not gonna lie. And I definitely feel it.
Yeah.
it's tough because I try to make a point to get as much sleep as I can, but realistically it's always being interrupted. So, it's just a phase, right? This will pass as the kids get older and they're more reliable. Their sleep is more reliable.
Mhm.
Their sleep patterns. So yeah, so it's definitely something that if it is happening often, that your average is like lower than between 6 and 8 hours of sleep, then it's definitely a hindrance to your memory.
And I imagine stress is probably this in the same boat.
Yep. Yep. Those things, sleep and stress, are killers for memory. Um, that's why when I train for competitions, oftentimes I'll train doing something that's high stress or where my body is stressed. So if I can if I know how to memorize at least somewhat well in those situations, when I'm sitting down at a competition and it's like quiet and there's nothing crazy, I'm nervous, but there's nothing crazy happening. Then that'll be like easier. That's the idea behind it.
Wow, that's a good. I was thinking the opposite, honestly. I was wondering if you like for like the days leading up to an event, you get a hotel, sleep in, have peace and quiet, rest your mind. You're doing the opposite. Like, what's an example of like how you would stress yourself out?
Yeah, so I will memorize. I would memorize, out in public in very noisy places, on a train, in a restaurant, with people looking at me, watching. Like when I put on my headphones and I'm like just staring at cards or using a timer, like people are like, "What is this guy doing?" And I hate when people, or I used to hate. I'm better at it now, but it used to make me really nervous. Because you start thinking about them and what they're watching versus what you're actually looking at, which you need to do to memorize.
Right.
So all that stuff would be great distractions. Sometimes I would do it when I work out too. I remember there were times I'd be on the treadmill in the middle of winter, running, sprinting, and I'd have numbers taped to the wall in front of me, right? And I'd be trying to memorize them as I'm like, dying on the treadmill. So that's good
Wow.
too. So
Wow.
elevating my heart rate, sweating, trying to survive the workout while also trying to memorize something. It's pretty
That's
good
incredible. That's
practice.
quite. No, I'm picturing something. It's like Rocky Four with memory training.
Yeah, it's gotta look like the weirdest. Like you're like, what a nerd, but then you're like, wait a minute, this guy's kind of. He's like a buff nerd. I don't know, whatever.
No, I did.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
I love, like I said, I'm gonna say it again. I love looking at your Instagram and researching you and figuring what you're all about, because it's like you are a man of many passions. It's pretty clear. Like I see you do CrossFit, you're into working out. Obviously, you're a family guy, you're a memory champion. You love adventures, traveling across the world. It's like, yo, this I gotta get you on my podcast. So I'm like super happy you
Thanks,
said
man.
yes. Yeah. It's and just the memories, like honestly, like a part of it. And super, super interesting.
It's
But
the main part. Yeah, the others. I mean, I do a lot of stuff, but it's mostly like just the interest that I have. When I have an idea for something and I have an interest in something, I just do it,
yeah.
and sometimes I get good at it and it becomes a big part of my life. Sometimes I don't do much with it. And it was just like a quick little one night stand.
Right. Well, I found a video on YouTube that you probably did about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago or so, I want to say. And it just made me stop. And that's when I was like, this podcast might take a little bit of a different direction, because it was when you were walking like up to Everest and you were just like, you try to get as many people to go as possible. And they always, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. I'd love to be in. And then when it comes time to put the money in or put your name in the hat and say, I'm in, everyone
Yeah.
backs out. They have excuses. And I feel that I'm in that boat with you a lot, or I'm trying to do things and plan things to push myself. And I'm probably not going to say it out loud unless I really mean it. And a lot of people are like, yeah, that sounds great. And they just don't show up, or you call, they don't get a
Yeah.
response and stuff like that. And it's just, I connected with you watching that, because it was like, I've been that person trying to get like a group of friends to like go take an
Yeah.
adventure, make memories for life. And I've realized that in my last 5, 6 years of life is not just playing on the memory thing, but making memories is like what this is all about. And
Yeah.
that just connected me big time. And like, I got to ask, like, when you say Everest expedition, what does that entail? And how in the world did you get into that?
Yeah. So Yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's funny because there's I was trying to run a trip. So I run trips to Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp um almost yearly. And I was trying to do something different with my little business to get a group to climb another peak in South America. A little more challenging, takes a little more time. And everybody who did the other trips with me was like, dude, count me in. I'm there. Where's the deposit? I'll give it to you right now. And we've been talking about this for like a year and a half. The trip didn't happen because I didn't have enough people. It was just me and really another guy. Two other guys were really gonna do it, and that wasn't enough to do the trip. But anyway, so I went. I felt bad. One of these guys really was aching to go, and I felt bad because we had the same conversation that you and I are having, and I felt like I was the guy finally saying, "Oh yeah, I can't do it." But I'm not that guy. I always do the thing that I want to do. It's just had this business angle to it that I couldn't. Anyway, so I made it up to him, and yesterday was it yesterday? Yeah, literally. Yeah, yesterday. I'm confused now because when I came back. But yesterday I ran a marathon with him. I went down to Miami.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I just like I've always wanted to run a marathon, but like I don't want to sign up for one and wait and train. I was just like, you know what? This guy, he runs one every Monday. I'm
every Monday. Man of many passions, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, you know what? Hey, can I come down there to Miami and run with you this week? And he's like, yeah, you sure? You ever done one before? I was like, no, but let's do it. So I did it, and like he was actually surprised to see me, and I was like there at 5:30. We started running, and that was it, and we talked about it. It's like some people talk the talk, a lot of people do, and then they let life get in the way, right? I'm not saying that there are no problems. Like last week, my dog, like there are things that are serious, right? But you can also make anything be serious enough. Like I had to do this, work came here, work there. But like at some point you gotta make time for the things that are gonna, push the needle in your life and make memories or change you, right?
Yeah.
If you never do them, your life's just gonna pass by. So listen, I understand when people say I can't make the trip, but at the same time, like I'm not gonna judge, you know what I mean? Like you do you. It's like you got to be the one to figure that out, that you need to make the move if you haven't. But as someone who sees it often as a whole for the general practice of many people, it's mind-blowing that people want to change or do something with their life and they don't. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I do. It's I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I just made the excuse of like, I'm just going to wait till I find someone in life to go do stuff with and go travel with and stuff. And it just never wasn't happening. And then I just took that one trip and I was like, I'm not going to wait anymore. And it just like set off like a spark. Awesome. And it was like, oh yeah, hell yeah. I don't need anybody. I was like, this is the greatest. I'm learning and I'm becoming more interesting. I'm finding my passions. I'm finding who I are and who I am. And go ahead, that led to me getting married. So go freaking figure, right?
Yeah.
So
you don't need anything to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, and that's part of why I went yesterday, because it's like people might be like, even my wife was like, you can't just do a marathon. Like you gotta train, you gotta be running. And I was like, you're right. Probably if I want to do well,
right,
and safely, maybe I probably should. But my goal wasn't to like break any records. It was just to complete. And I run and I'm fit, so it's definitely doable. It'll be painful, and it was. I'm still in a lot of pain, but I did it. I didn't have to wait for anybody. I could have said, "Oh, I want to wait for a competition and to sign up and wait till my friends are all in," But no, it's just like fuck it. Even if the guy had said I can't do it, like I could have done it myself anyways, right? Just go run 26 miles, And so I know a lot of people who will say like this reason or excuse after the other, and at some point like you can do whatever you want to do. There are no limitations.
I respect that big time. It reminds me of I bring up the guy's name in every other podcast, so people are like, oh, he doesn't talk about him. You know who David Goggins is?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I'm listening to his audio book, like I'm going to the yeah, exactly. But he's like, preaching what you're saying, obviously to a different level, but it is just like,
totally different level, but
yeah, different
same
level.
ideas.
But yeah, it's just finding stuff to like move the needle, as you said, and stop making excuses. You just go do it, and waking up and
Yeah.
challenging yourself and how important that is in life. And
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, you also got to find like what is important to you, you know, like I could go decide, you know, because and be that selfish guy, like I don't care, I'm just gonna go do all the mountain climbs I want because I can. I'm listening to
right.
Nelson's advice, like just do what you do. But I have a family, right? And
Yeah,
but family is super important to me, and I want to be there for my kids. So
right.
I have to be reasonable, but I don't throw out my adventure life because I have kids, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's got to be a balance. Something that's fair to everybody involved. I have a lot of responsibility that I owe my family.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you know, I want to show my kids that this is something you can do, but also do it for myself too, you know?
Yeah,
So you have to weigh that also.
that's fantastic. I mean, it's something that I think about often as we're family planning in the next year or so. And it's just
Okay.
like, that's going to be
Exciting.
priority number one. And I'm super happy about it. But at the same time, back in my mind, it's like, don't forget who you are and what makes
Yeah.
you happy too. And always pursue your hobbies and passions and stuff too. So it'll be interesting to see how I'm able to balance that out. But I'm sure you have a very supportive wife, as I do too. So that makes life a hell of a lot easier when you have that.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I got to ask you,
Yeah.
like,
Well, okay.
go,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Cause I was going to ask
I was
something
going to
else.
say,
Go ahead.
I didn't even get to the Everest part, but in
Yeah, that's what I was
short,
going to ask you. Like,
okay.
are you summiting Everest or what does this look like?
Yeah. So the goal with each of those expeditions is to summit. Um, the reason why I put expedition instead of summit is because I haven't summited. It's eluded me 4 times already, which is very frustrating, but you know, it is what it is. And I keep going for that major goal that I've had for the last 10 plus years, to summit Everest. The reasons I haven't are varied, but ultimately, you know, I think at this point it's almost something in my head, I think, but that I have to get through. But you know, I've had some serious situations up there with coming close to potentially staying on the mountain, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
Um, but it's I've gotten pretty close. I mean, I've gotten within 50 meters of the top. Um, last 2021, I was there again and made it like 300 meters from the top. So um, I'm close. I'm right there. It's just it's the thing I'm struggling with. I'll figure it out. But um, you know, that's one thing is like get to the summit. But the expeditions themselves are amazing experiences that I've had, and I've learned a lot from them, and I wouldn't trade them for the world. Like I'm happy that I have each of those 4 attempts as their own standalone experience, you know?
Wow. But wow. I mean, I'm just as you're describing it, I never realized you were that close and had to turn around. Like, does
Yeah.
that just eat at you a little bit?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sucks because it's like to have this conversation, like I've been up Everest 4 times, and you know, I don't like to say, like, it's a weird thing to say, like, oh, I've climbed on Everest. Like, I can't say I've summited Everest 4 times. Can't even say I've summited Everest once, but I don't know. I don't know how to say it correctly. So there's always like a asterisk, you know, that I have to
Yeah.
like explain, like, okay, I've been up Everest, most of Everest, actually, like 99% of it, just haven't summited. So call that what you will.
Was it weather purposes or
There was one year, 2013, was more weather related than
yeah.
anything. We were on the north side, and our summit evening was brutally cold. On that side of the mountain, it's even more exaggerated weather. So it was brutally cold. I couldn't feel my fingers at all. So I just decided to turn around to not lose any digits, you
Oof.
know?
That's a tough that's a tough thing to do. Like how far you go, like literally
Yeah.
it's a tough decision.
Yeah, but I've never regretted my turnarounds. You know, I think I'm happy with the way that I've climbed. You know, I don't take crazy risks.
Mhm.
I mean, climbing Everest is a risk, but there are people who just go, they'll lose fingers, they don't care, all for the summit. And I'm like, I don't admire that. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, you put a lot of people at risk when you do stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I've climbed as safe as I can, and when something doesn't feel right, or I think I'm on the edge, like I'll turn around. The
Speaking
mountain
of
doesn't go
edge,
anywhere.
I have a fear of heights. Is there like when you're summiting, is there like drop offs that are just
Oh yeah.
unimaginable? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I mean, not the certain parts, it's more gradual. You can see the slope the whole way, but
Right.
some you can even see that, but then it's super steep. And then some are just like, there's like all the way down there is
You
3,000
got
feet down
chains? Are
is
you holding on
Tibet.
to chains at all? Or you...
No chains. They
yeah.
do. The Sherpas will install a fixed line, which are just they're anchors in the ice.
Yeah.
And there's a fixed rope that goes all the way up. But you got to clip in, and it's really there just as a suggestion. Like if you fell, they probably will hold you, but I don't think that that's necessarily what they're intended for. But it is a safety precaution.
Oh my
But yeah,
God.
they're not like
Yeah.
the chains that you find on like Half Dome or something.
Like Angel, I'm thinking of Angel's Landing because I've been to
Or that.
Zion
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't even do that. I make it up halfway up Walter's Wiggles. I was like, yep, nope. Dude, you can't see it, but man, my hands are sweating as you're like talking
No.
about this. This is just not for me. I'm working on my fear of heights gradually, but that will probably never happen. When
We'll
are you
see.
going? When are you going back? Do you have any plans to go back to Everest?
I'd like to go back in 2024. It'll be the 100-year anniversary from the first
Wow.
thought summit. The guy
Wow.
never came back, so they don't know if he actually summited, but it's a famous year on the mountain, so it'd be cool to be there.
Wow. And I gotta ask you, I won't keep you too much longer, but I gotta ask you. So you did Denali.
Yeah.
Denali is I saw that in person. I was one of the 30 percenters, they call it. When my wife and I went there about a year and a half ago.
Uh-huh.
We woke up and I don't know, 34 miles away, there it was. It is
It's an awesome.
ginormous.
Yeah, it's massive.
How did you get into that? I heard your story about having no money. You just put it on a credit card. You're like, forget it, I'm just gonna do this. How'd that come
Yeah,
about?
I was like a pivotal time in my life. I had the year before I had done a mountaineering course on Mount Rainier and had this itch to go back and do another mountain. And the course that we did on Rainier was a Denali prep course. So it made sense that the next peak I was going to do was Denali. I didn't feel prepared for it. Like I was pretty new to the sport of mountaineering, but fuck it. And so yeah, I needed something like that, and I just said I'm going to do it and figure it out, all the costs and everything after. Not super responsible, but at the same time, it was like I felt like it's what I needed to do, and yeah, it changed my life. I mean, it was an amazing expedition. We summited. It was a really tough climb, but I mean, I wouldn't. It's just amazing.
What does that even look like? So you arrive at the Denali and then you grab some gear. How long does this take? Are you
Yeah,
sleeping
it
somewhere?
was 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, we actually summited in 2 weeks, but then we got stuck in a snowstorm for a week on the way down, which
Jesus.
sucked because we were like, "Cool, man, we're gonna be eating burgers and pizzas and having beer tomorrow," and then 1 week of a storm, we were stuck in our tents, running out of food. It sucked.
Were you scared or were you okay
Not
the whole
scared. I
time?
was just like hungry and pissed.
Yeah.
We had just summited, so we were elated as well, but fed up with the cold and everything. But yeah, with Denali, you fly into Anchorage, you drive up to a town called Talkeetna.
Yeah.
It's about like 2 hours out. You gather all your gear, you take a little otter plane that lands on the ice, on the snow at the base lowest camp. And then you put your shit on the sled and you trek out. And you set up camps along the way.
What time of year did you do it? Did you have sunlight the whole time?
It was summer, yeah. So it
Yeah.
never got dark, which was pretty weird. So you could climb any time of day, which was kind of cool.
Wow. What did you do to pass the days by when you were just stuck? You just sit there?
Yeah, man. I have a lot of, if you go to the very early videos on my YouTube channel, you'll see all of those, stupid handheld video camera videos that me and my tent mate were doing. And most of those were during that week period because we were going a bit out of our minds,
Yeah.
writing in our diaries, playing cards, just talking nonsense, walking around the camp in the blizzard, trying to talk to other teams.
Wow.
Just laying there listening to music if you had batteries still, it's like,
Right? I mean, yeah,
yeah.
everything would be
It's a
dead.
good exercise, man. Like to be bored like that. What do you do with yourself? It's kind of
Yeah.
cool not to. And back then, this was 2009, so didn't really have like I don't think I even had an iPhone
They
yet.
just came out. Yeah. It is interesting. You brought something up about like atrophy, I believe you said was like, you think people's memories are getting worse because we just don't have a need to remember things like we did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like anything. If you don't use it, then it goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your brain um, doesn't prioritize it. So why should it be good if you don't practice?
Yeah. And it's funny you're talking about like remembering your friends' numbers from high school. I remember like the pattern I would dial on the phone
Yeah,
pad. Like if it was a square, if it was a diamond, or if I had to go up to the
or
left or
like a
something like
cross.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I still remember some of those. But yeah, it's funny that I remember my friends' numbers from high school. I can't remember my wife's phone number because it's just like plugging in my phone. I never need it. So yeah, this has been an awesome conversation. I can like talk to you for hours, honestly, about so
Thanks, man.
much of this stuff, and it's really cool, honestly, to just be relatable. Like knowing that this isn't just a gift; this is something that you actually
Totally.
work towards, and we can all work towards. And I'm so thankful you gave us some tips and tricks on how we can do that. And for anybody who's interested in really pushing it, I highly recommend signing up for your masterclass. Like, I'd be super interested to see in like just like a few weeks of working with you what I can do with my memory. But
Yeah, you'd be
do
surprised. Yeah.
you have any plans on going for title number 6?
I've thought about it. We'll see. I'm kind of flirting with the idea this year, but I don't know. There's something nice about having
Yeah.
quit and on a winning note, right? Like if I go and
Yeah.
I
Off in the
lose,
sunset.
if I lose, I'm gonna be like, well, I got to win now. So then I
Yeah.
would do it again, and then if I, you know, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
I gotta ask, what's the perks of like winning a USA memory champ?
Oh, there's not that many. It's relatively small, so it's not like you get like some major deal or anything out of it. Although, I mean, you could argue that it gave me the career that I have. I got a ton of speaking engagements over the years because of this. It gives me a lot of credibility for my business.
Mm.
I've been on the Today Show, like things
Yeah.
like that would have never happened if I hadn't won. But prize money, there never really was any. Occasionally a thing or two, but it's not like I've made a living off of weeping the floor at these competitions, just racking in all this prize money. It's not like tennis or anything.
You
I
watch
mean,
in like 10 years, they're gonna be raking in millions. You're
I
like,
would be
God
so
damn
pissed. I'd be like,
it.
I'm owed X amount based on what is happening right now in the sport. But no,
You wait. But
yeah.
yeah, it's funny. I wrote down, I never asked it, but I did write down on my notepad here, giving speeches. Do you remember like speeches? Like, is it super easy because you just remember what you want to say?
I can, but at this point, I have like a 3 or 4 speeches that I have in the can, and it's like I just know them, and I don't say them verbatim. I don't like speeches that go that way. It feels forced to me, so I just know what I'm going to say, and I have slides too, so it's like it's almost like
Yeah.
in me already. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Nelson, this has been awesome. I'd love to give people an opportunity to find you, follow you. I'm going to tag all your stuff in the show notes, but please, where can people find you?
Yeah, just my website's easiest. It's all there. So nelsondellis.com. You can sign up for my course through there. You can find my YouTube, Instagram, all. And then even my books linked through there. But if you just Google my name too, you'll find stuff. So whatever you desire, I will be
Man,
there.
this is fantastic. Like I said, I'm honored. I'm honestly honored for you to be here. I'm so happy you said yes. I was really looking
Yeah,
forward to
my
this
pleasure.
conversation. So super happy we can make this happen. This is awesome. It's been a blast. So thank you so much, Nelson. Welcome back anytime. I could definitely pick your brain all day.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, Nelson, I appreciate it.